How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Hope you're on a real nice day so far. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to improve the basic white bread yet again. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. The first ever video posted on this channel was for a basic white bread recipe. It contained flour, water, yeast and salt. And it was baked on the same day. That is as basic as it gets. And I would wager that it's the kind of bread that most people would try to bake on their first time. I know I did. And it's a great starting point for your bread making journey. Later, I posted an improved version of that recipe using a pre-ferment. But I guess you all know my stance on pre-ferments by now. So it was time to update this recipe once again. We're still going to keep it simple, we're still going to keep it basic. In fact, this is more basic since we're making it with the no-knead method. It'll take less effort and will produce a far better result. This is mostly for the casual baker or for the inexperienced baker. I just want to show you that small adjustments can produce great results. And bread making does not need to be complicated at all. So let's get to it. Here's what we'll need. As I mentioned earlier, it's a basic loaf. Flour, yeast, salt and water. Yes, we could improve this loaf even further by swapping some of the white flour for whole wheat or for rye. Or by adding some other ingredients like butter, an egg, some seeds, or sour cream, you name it. Or perhaps by increasing the hydration. But that's not the point here. It's called the basic white bread for a reason. It contains 4 ingredients and it does not involve any special preparations. As for the equipment, we'll need a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe and some way of creating steam. My favorite tool for this is the water spray bottle, but there are plenty of other methods and you can find a video about that in the Principles of Baking playlist. If you don't want to deal with steam, you can bake it without. Steam will just make the top crust nice and crispy. Now to make things even simpler, we are going to bake this in a loaf tin. And this loaf will fit perfectly in a 2 pound or 900 gram tin. Or you can bake it on a tray if you don't have a tin. Okay, let's start with temperature control. My kitchen is around 22 degrees Celsius or 74 Fahrenheit. I'm going to use water that's around the same temperature because we're aiming for a final dough temperature of around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius. By the time we finish mixing all the ingredients, the temperature will come up a little bit. Saying that, this is a no-knead dough, so the temperature will not rise that much. Now in a large bowl, add the water, the yeast and the salt. And then give it all a good mix. You want to dissolve the salt completely. You can use a spatula here, but a whisk is also a great tool. It's perfect for no-knead recipes where the initial mix is very important. We want all the ingredients to be completely dissolved before we add the flour. Once everything's nicely mixed, add the flour. Then grab your scraper and mix it to a dough. Mix it until there's no dry flour left. This dough has a hydration of 65%. I'm using strong bread flour, so the dough scraper might not be enough. You might want to finish the mix with your hands. And this will also help you to get rid of any lumps. Fold the dough over itself for around 30 seconds, just to ensure that everything's nice and smooth. We're not trying to knead it, we're just trying to make it nice and smooth. Which of course some people will argue that is not a no-knead dough anymore, but it is a no-knead dough. It does not leave the bowl, and you are not working it for any significant amount of time. Okay, once it's all mixed up, place it in a clean bowl and take its temperature. 25 degrees Celsius, 75 Fahrenheit. That's just about right for this. Now we can cover up our dough and pop it in the fridge for 30 minutes. A long cold fermentation is how we will develop loads of flavor in this dough. It's always a good idea to give your dough a few folds while it's cold fermenting. The first fold after 30 minutes is only there to cool the dough down real quick. As the dough sits in the fridge, its outside gets cold while the inside is still warm. Folding the cold outside part into the center evens out the temperature in the dough. And of course another benefit is tightness. Folding replaces kneading in this recipe. Okay, once the fold is done, pop the dough back into the bowl, cover it up and pop it back into the fridge. Now from this point, we'll leave it in there for 24 hours. But it's still worth pulling it out again and folding it or degassing it once in a while. I mixed this dough at around 4 o'clock in the evening. Then it spent 30 minutes in the fridge before the first fold. It is now 4 hours later, it's almost bedtime for me. And the bowl that I'm using is not the biggest one. This dough will keep rising. So I'm giving it another fold before bedtime. I could simply press it and degas it to stop it rising too soon, but I think folding is a better method because it combines degassing and tightening. And you can find a full video on this topic in the Principles of Baking playlist. Okay, this gets covered up and is going back into the fridge. And I'm off to bed. But of course I'm going to check on it before I go to work in the morning. As you can see, it's reached the lid already. So of course I'm going to give it another fold before I'm off to work. And you could keep going like this. Leave your dough in the fridge for 48 hours, 72 hours. Just give it a fold once in a while. Okay, this thing's going in the fridge and I'm off to work. I'll be back home at around 3:30 in the afternoon. And I'm back. It's been almost 24 hours since I mixed this dough. It has filled the bowl almost perfectly. If I had not folded it, it would have climbed out for sure. Just look at all those beautiful bubbles. This is well fermented. Okay, before we move on to the final shape, let's prep our baking tin. Grease it with butter, brush it with oil, line it with some non-stick paper. Anything to stop it from sticking. It took me a long time to learn that lesson. I was always looking for some magic tin that doesn't stick. I don't think that exists. Greasing it is what truly makes it non-stick, at least in my experience. Okay, let's do the final shape. And since this is a basic recipe, the shaping is also basic. Dust your dough with flour, tip it out on the table, flatten it out. Make sure that it's a bit narrower than your tin, because as you roll it, it will spread out a bit. And that's all we need to do here. Just roll the dough up, gently. Don't roll it very tight. If you roll it very tightly, it might just rip open as it bakes. We don't want a huge amount of tension here. And try and make it as even as you can. If the loose end of dough at the bottom becomes a bit narrow, just stretch it out sideways and keep rolling. Now this can go in the tin as it is. I have this habit of pinching the seam together. It is not going to make a big difference in this case. We can definitely fold the end bits down to make them nice and neat. But that's all there is to the shaping. Just flatten it, roll it up, try and make it as straight and as even as possible, and then pop it in a greased tin. And if you are interested in this specific tin, you can find it in my Amazon shop. It comes with a lid so you can bake nice square sandwich loaves. Okay, final shaping done. Let's clean down the mess and get ready for final proof. Cover the loaf so it doesn't dry out. Leave it to sit for around 2.5 hours. This of course will depend on the temperature of your kitchen. Mine was around 23 degrees Celsius or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat the oven, 180 degrees Celsius, fan off. And that is 356 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure that the dough has risen well. It should almost reach the top of the tin. One last thing before it goes in the oven, give it a good spraying of water. This will enhance the color of the crust and make it nice and crispy. Okay, let's get this bad boy in the oven, and initially it will take around 40 minutes. But it won't be done yet. After 40 minutes of baking, remove the tin from the oven and then remove the loaf from the tin. Obviously, judging by the top crust, it looks like it's done. But as we take it out of the tin, we'll notice that the sides and the bottom are still quite pale. We could color them by just baking the loaf in the tin for longer, but then the top crust could get too dark. So to get a nice even crust color all around, what we're gonna do is place the loaf just like this on its side back into the oven for 10 more minutes. And ideally, what you wanna do is place it down on the side, bake it for 5 minutes, then flip it and bake it for 5 minutes on the other side. And this is what you're gonna get, beautifully golden brown loaf, all around. Now you may not need to do this depending on your oven. My crappy oven only has one heating element, and that's at the top. So it doesn't bake very well from the bottom. That may as well just be the case for me. But it's still a good idea to take the loaf from the tin and put it back in the oven for a little while. Besides just coloring the crust, it also makes it set. That prevents your loaf from losing its shape as it cools down. But there you have it. That's my improvement on a basic white loaf. A long cold fermentation for that extra flavor with a few folds in between to make up for not needing. A good amount of steam for a crispy crust and a nice even bake on all sides for great color and perfect shape. Here's what it looks like 2 days later. Still nice and bouncy, still nice and soft. And now you need to get into the kitchen and start mixing. So what do you think this recipe? Would you call it an improvement? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.